Hello, all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land and the podcast universe. We are the Nonprofits, a show where we discuss current events and social issues from a skeptical humanist perspective. The Nonprofits is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. You can support us at patreon.com/thenonprofits. Or tell us what you like, dislike, and what you want and don't want in the comments, and email us at non-profits@atheist-community.org. Furthermore, you can find us on Discord at tiny.cc/ACA Discord and look for the Nonprofits channel. Like, subscribe, and ring that pucking bell to get notifications of our latest videos. And lastly, in holding with our fans' requests, we are featuring some more international content this show and talking about the band Pussy Riot. So howdy, hosts. What have you been up to? How you been doing?
I am doing great. Now, there's a number of people who, when they listen to this show, they don't watch the show. They're listening to it either on podcast or a number of different platforms. So just to paint the picture, I'm usually on that side, except now this time I'm on this side. So whenever you're listening to the podcast, just imagine that you're looking at a mirror image. That's where I am actually sitting right now. It's a little weird to be on the left.
And it's a little weird for me to be on the right.
Yes. But never mind all the people on the left and the right. We don't matter nearly as much as the person in the
middle. I wouldn't say that.
Oh, wrong way. I know how cameras work. Jenna, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
I thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So tell us, what have you been up to?
Oh my God, I've been busy. Do you want to talk about my shows? All those shows I'm doing?
Yeah, definitely.
So
I know you've been on Twitch lately.
Yes, so on Twitch, I've got 2 shows going right now, where I've got one where on Monday through Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Central for just 15 minutes, I live stream meditation. So if anybody wants to learn how I do it, there's a million different ways to do it, but just to have a starting point if you don't know where to start, or if you want somebody to help you build the habit, that's kind of what I'm there for, since I'm doing it anyway. And then also on Fridays, I have at 3:30 p.m., I have Carrot Noises, where I'm live streaming at kind of like a paint and chat kind of thing. And because on Twitch, they usually do video games and chatting while they do that. Well, I don't really play video games, so I decided to paint.
I like it. I think I've actually watched one of those before.
Yeah. I painted this one.
I don't remember what you were painting, to be honest. It was kind of like in the middle of the production.
you got to tell people
it was a while
where that
ago.
name came from, though.
Yeah, yeah. Do tell us about Carrot Noises.
So Carrot Noises is, it's kind of like a tip off to Bob Ross. There's a story that he used to tell that his dad used to tell him. And the story goes, what's the best way to catch a rabbit? Well, the best way to catch a rabbit is to go out and hide behind a tree, make some carrot noises. And then when the rabbit jumps out, runs by, you just kind of jump out and grab it.
Got it.
This works really well until you go out to the tree and then try to figure out what noise a carrot makes. So I thought that was kind of like a cute abstract idea. So I gotta turn that into name of the show. Thank you.
I like it.
We also have what's becoming one of my favorite shows is the Ethan and Jenna show on Sundays at 11 a.m. So it's before Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. But we focus on mental health and fill in the blank, because we've found so much trauma that has come from where we've come from, basically. And we think that there's a lot of things that need to be talked about more. And so we're kind of doing just a peer call-in show where people can call in and talk about mental health and whatever the topic is, whether it's mental health and death, mental health and loneliness, whatever it is. We usually pick things that are difficult to talk about that we think should be talked about more.
That's usually how you normalize those topics. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And then also I have my first show, which is Atheist Stasis on Wednesdays. where I basically interview people because I'm just so curious about the new world that I found out. I found out I don't live in Neverland anymore. Right. So now I've got to learn about this world. So I'm picking random people here and there that can teach me about this new world I'm living in and sharing perspectives that way.
I like it. That's so cool.
Thank you.
It's neat to see that you was AXP your first exposure to being a public figure, or
No.
were you doing any of this before?
I did 2 episodes of Secular Sexuality and 1 episode of Nonprofits before AXP.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's so awesome. And now you're off doing your own thing as well.
Yes.
I love it.
I think that like a month after I started AXP, I was like, I need to do something. So I started Atheist.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about, there really is. Like you were saying, so much to talk about that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
Puck, what do you have to talk about?
Oh goodness, mostly I just play a lot of video games. My wife and I, she has a milestone birthday coming up this year, and so just to do something special for us for the entire year, we've decided on the same number of video games as her birthday that we are going to not just complete them, or not beat them, but we're going to complete that many games. I don't want to say the number for privacy reasons. Obviously, we don't want to be giving away too much information.
Right.
But yes, this has actually been occupying a substantial portion of my time. And the good thing about that is while I'm playing these games, I'm usually listening to atheist propaganda in the background. So I often do not get to catch the Ethan and Jenna show live. But you better believe on Monday after I get home from work, it's playing in the background as I'm doing my anniversary project or my birthday project with my wife.
Oh, that's so awesome. So
what a neat idea.
You'd have to do like a game every couple weeks or so.
Yes, we do. Some games are shorter than others. Some are like, they're done in 5 hours and you never have to look at it again. Okay. Some other games that we've chosen that will take estimated up to 150 to 200 hours.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought games were.
Yeah, some of them will.
Those games.
Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds like fun.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to share before we get going? I haven't been up to very much other than I have the pleasure of conducting again over here.
Just that this is I've done a number of shows with the ACA now. Jenna and I, we were actually friends long before any of this ever happened. Before she was a regular host on the ACA, we were talking for a long time. So me sitting next to her on this show, this is just like friends hanging out now. And we talk.
That's awesome.
We've been talking for a couple of years. Has it been a couple of years now, Jenna? I think so, at least.
I don't even know. But
this is just like buddy time, and I'm honored to be on here with you. Finally, I'm doing a show with one of my favorites. So thank you.
Hey, well, ACA is becoming a family. We're all family and we're all buddies. So it's good.
Yeah. All right. Absolutely.
What's on the docket, Martin?
Oh, I do want to mention I'm going to be co-hosting on The Perspective, which is a show that your friendly neighborhood atheist Ethan Michael puts on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central, where it's basically like kind of another Talk Heathen or AXP, but really, really, really friendly. So I'm actually going to be hosting that with Kenneth Leonard next Tuesday. If anybody wants to check that out, Kenneth Leonard is up and coming in the YouTube community, and I highly recommend listening to whatever it is he has to say.
Yeah, we had him on here 4 weeks ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, Kenneth is pretty great. Yeah. I wasn't on that episode, but I watched it.
That does remind me too, Martin. I believe you and I are slated to be on that show together too.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned it. Actually, it's a few weeks or a couple weeks out now. But on March 9th, I believe. Let me check my calendar and make sure that's
only
accurate.
2 weeks out.
Tuesday, March 9th.
Yeah.
Puck and I are going to be hosting The Perspective together, and
cool.
That's going to be super awesome.
Ethan Michael's getting a shout out on this show.
He is.
He is.
We should just bring him back onto the nonprofits one of these days.
We should. He's a busy guy though. We'll see if we can put in a request. All right. So as awesome as it is to talk about us, they're here to talk us. Our fans are here, I should say, to hear us talk about the news. So let's get started with everybody's favorite radio host, Rush Limbaugh. So I have a very interesting personal experience with right-wing media, I'll say, but Rush Limbaugh was never in my wheelhouse. I, back when I was a conservative, found him to be a little bit too aggressive and a little bit too hateful for my tastes. But yeah, nowadays, when I look back and realize all of the hate and the vitriol that he spewed and all of the hatred that he inspired, well, you know, it really just gets my blood boiling. So before I get too heated and go off about him, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Jenna. So Jenna, what have you found out about Rush and what's his legacy?
You know, when I found out that he died, I was like, oh, I've heard that name before. So I kind of actually had to look him up because I didn't know off the top of my head. But then I was like, oh, okay, I remember that guy. But kind of like you, I didn't really pay attention to him. He wasn't my taste at all. But after looking into him, I've come to think about some things. And one of those things is he's got me thinking about, you know, he's successful, right? Like he's been given the Presidential Medal of Honor, right? It's gotten me thinking, I want to know what it is about him that made him popular. You know, was it just how nasty he was? Was it that he had these views? Was it that he shared these views in a convincing way? What was it that made him get there? And what is it about him that we don't like specifically? Because I think that he's some kind of a success story, right?
Absolutely.
So
he was very successful at what he did.
Yes. We have to at least acknowledge that to, you know, for anybody to want to listen to what we have to say, you know, kind of remove the bias there a little bit. Because yes, we completely disagree with him on many, many points, but at the same time, we have to listen to it. We have to be able to understand the other side if we want to work with them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. No, and that's a really important point. It's important to understand why people found him appealing and what parts of his message were receptive to them if we're going to address why you know, we have political disagreements essentially with the conclusions that they're reaching in regard to Christian nationalism. I see Rush as kind of the Trump before Trump, if you will, as in they are both very loud and opinionated public figures. And they really did go off about certain minority groups and their views on them. I don't think that's disputable at this point. They definitely had a lot to say about minority groups. Yeah. Puck, do you have anything that you wanted to chime in here and add on the Rush Limbaugh topic?
Going along with what you know, Jenna was asking, what is it that makes these people popular? I think part of the appeal, and you hear this echoed with Trump also, is these people are saying what we want to say, but now someone has the courage to go up and say it. They actually feel silenced. And so when someone like Trump, when someone like Limbaugh, when someone like Alex Jones, or, you know, whoever we can think of in conservative media says these things, it's a breath of fresh air saying, oh, finally, there's a place where the woke left isn't censoring us and we can talk about the things that we really need to talk about.
So then that's...
Yeah, please.
I'm so sorry. I was just saying that that's what we need to address then, is that these people feel represented well, right? Yeah, and we're like, oh my God, that's disgusting. But they feel represented. That speaks wonders.
Right.
And the worst thing about it is that, you know, I spent a long time not just studying the rhetoric of the right, but also trying to understand why it's convincing. One of my favorite quotes from Ronald Reagan is, if you're explaining, you're losing. So one very popular tactic is they give some completely outrageous claim or opinion, and then somebody from because we like to explain, right? The three of us, we like to say, oh, that's clearly wrong, and I can show you exactly why that's wrong. And we can address our base, and we can say these are why these points are factually incorrect. But by the time we're explaining that, they've already moved on to the next topic, and they're already saying something else that we have to explain. We're always going to be one step behind. And there are a number of people who, unfortunately, they're going to latch on to the first thing they hear, and they're going to assume that that's true until it can be proven otherwise. So that's where
Yes,
that popularity
indeed.
comes in, because they're leading from the front foot. They're talking about these things, and who cares if it's factually correct? They have their facts, we have ours. Who's to say what's right, right?
Yeah.
So
The
they would,
feelings the feelings train moves very fast and the facts train moves a little slower, and people like to reach a quick conclusion instead of an accurate one.
Yeah. And so that's why I think it's popular. It's because it's out there, it's loud, it's punchy, and he's saying things that it seems like the left and is not allowing people to talk about. So it plays to a lot of narratives, and it's doing its job.
Absolutely.
So
Jenna, did you have anything to... Oh, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then how do we feel about the fact that he's dead? Because I know that there's a lot of people who automatically assume that we are just throwing parties and celebrating and really, really, really jumping around about this.
Yeah. No, for me, it was, I woke up and I saw that he had passed, and I went on with my day, and I realized that there's one less hateful person on the radio, and that's a good thing, if you ask me. So is him dying a good thing? No, but the fact that his show is over is a good thing.
Yeah, same. I mean, I would more celebrate the fact that a media voice is gone rather than someone has died. It's right. I mean, there's a loss not just to him but his family and people that he was close to, and I feel for them. But it's nice that the voice, the rhetoric is not coming out. But that's okay, because there's many other people to take on the mantle. And then my question becomes, how do you deal with this? We all agree to this, that they're leading from the front foot. We're explaining some things that are 3 statements old already. What do you do?
It's interesting. I guess, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Jenna.
Well, actually, I forgot what I was going to say. It's okay.
Oh, I was going to say that you have to hit them in the feelings and not the facts department. I've mentioned this on the nonprofits before. I think it was on my first episode. But the book, How to Have Impossible Conversations by Peter Boghossian, he talks about how if you introduce a fact, you want to make sure that it's a fact that your interlocutor wants. And that's just his opinion on how to argue. I'm not saying don't ever use facts ever. But if you're trying to convince somebody outside of a deeply held belief, they're not going to listen to the first fact that you throw at them. They're going to completely disregard it because it goes against everything that they already understand to be true. Even if we know those things are wrong, the fact is just going to kind of bounce off of their feelings shield, if you will, to play off of that dichotomy.
So one of the funniest things that this reminded me of, you guys have heard of Alex Jones, I'm sure, right?
Oh yes,
yeah, and he's a conservative commentator. He does what is it, InfoWars, I believe the show's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
He fights a war on info.
Yeah. Yes, he does. And there was a lawsuit filed against him for some defamation. And the interesting defense, and I love this. The defense was that you're allowed to give an opinion about something, on media or whatever. That's fine, as long as people don't believe that you are representing facts. Okay, so the defense was actually there's court records for this, that there is no possible way that any reasonable person watching this show could think that he's talking about facts. It is clearly an opinion, and it is clearly satire. But does his audience think that? Like, that was the court defense, but
does his audience care?
Yeah, I'm guessing that there's a substantial portion of the audience who they don't realize that this is like how I don't know. That's what came across as ridiculous to me. The court case said clearly this is not supposed to be taken seriously, but clearly a lot of people are.
I'm just listening to this, and not to be critical or anything, but I'm being more critical of myself, if anything. But I'm more inclined to try to stop grouping Christians together in one bucket. Because
that's true.
There's so many different kinds with so many different goals, so many Christians that couldn't stand Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
And really this is kind of like a thought out loud to myself about how I just want to stop being so general.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we should use more specific language. Let's say evangelical Christians who listen to Rush, because I know there's a strong overlap in that subsection of Christianity. But no, you're absolutely correct. We shouldn't paint with a broad brush in regard to Christianity, because it really is a very diverse religion. Let's say lots of different
many religions,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
This is why I wanted to do a nonprofits episode with you, Jenna, because I love the way you just kind of think out loud.
Sorry.
And no, it's a
great.
Beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing to play off of. And so please think out loud this entire episode, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. This was what I was looking forward to most.
Well, so I'm going to think out loud real quick about how this is so interesting to me, how in this community, people are interested in hearing people's thoughts. People are interested in talking about serious things. When it's like, I've grown up, people getting so annoyed with me. Like, people are like, hey, Jenna, what do you think? I'm like, you want to hear what I think? It's kind of cool, you know?
See, and I get in trouble because I share what I think a little bit too often. Sometimes I've been accused of doing. So, yeah.
That's my problem. That's because people are like, Jenna, just chill.
Stop. Yeah.
I'm like,
I've had to learn to temper
I've just always ignored them.
Yeah, there are some people who are willing to do some deep dives into some interesting topics and gray areas. And there are some people who just aren't. And, you know, out of respect for them, and you know, like I can be friends with someone on a casual acquaintance level without having to dig into this deep stuff. But there are I actually do have some friends, like pretty much all we do is deep dives into stuff, right?
Right.
Like I was just talking to somebody earlier today about the deep dives of the gray areas of cancel culture. But we don't have enough time to get into that topic.
Oh yeah, I really want to get into that topic though.
Yeah.
Oh man,
another time.
It'll have to be another nonprofits episode.
No, but the tangential attachment to cancel culture in this topic is, like, how do you fight back? There, he has a right to give an opinion. Nobody's arguing that, right? And other commentators have a right to do that. But when is the appropriate time to fight back, and how do you fight back against that in a way that's receptive, maybe not to their base, but at least to the people who are in the middle, who are listening to it for the first time? How do you get them to like not even give that attention?
Why are you under the impression that we need to fight at all?
I don't like the direction where it would go if people had the, how do I want to say this? It takes a certain epistemology to buy into this rhetoric. Mm-hmm. And if you just had the proper epistemology, we'll call it epuxtemology, just to throw the pun in there. If we had the proper epistemology, then a lot of problems get taken care of. Conspiracy theory claims, a political rhetoric like this, abusive religion. So it's more to me an interest in making sure that people are thinking right, because you know what? They're going to vote. Okay, they live down the street from me, and they're affecting public policy.
I'm sorry, I think you misunderstood my question.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just
no. If I'm not answering, cut me off.
Well, so I think what you're answering is, why are we fighting for this? But what I meant to say is, why is it fighting instead of something else? Why isn't it complying? What is it?
To a certain extent, you probably
compromising.
Like,
well, was it when you're compliant? Yeah, I guess compromise.
Negotiating.
Yeah.
No. Okay,
like, you know what I mean? Like, instead of looking at this as like a let's fight back against this.
I think it's important to have lines of what's acceptable discourse and what's not, you know. And I think that Rush danced all over those lines personally.
Yes, I agree.
There were some things that he said about LGBT people and about the Black community and other people of color, just in general. You know, let's say everybody who wasn't white people or white Christians, Rush had a problem with them, and he was very vocal about those problems. And so I think that kind of discourse, while I'm not saying that it shouldn't have ever been allowed on the radio. We need to understand that it leads to consequences in the public square. And so that's why we shouldn't necessarily fight against it, but we should come correct if we're going to speak out against it, I guess.
So do you think we should censor?
I mean, censor from the government down? No. I don't think the government should be the one to say that Rush shouldn't be allowed, but we personally?
Yeah.
Censor who?
People that are extreme, like Rush Limbaugh, people who have these views that are very hurtful.
I'm more saying that, like the fact that like a radio station was willing to broadcast him for that many number of years, you know, was.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at, is that these are media empires. These aren't just people operating on their own on a podcast.
Well, they seem pretty money driven. I mean, I found one quote by Rush Limbaugh that I found from rollingstone.com. He said, I wanted to be the reason people listened. That's how you pad your pocket. So not only from that quote, but just that just kind of puts it in perspective from, in my opinion, but just what I've learned about him, he just seems like he was careless because it made money, you know? And I think that's just kind of the same approach that anybody who promoted him or made money off of him was about. You know, it's like, oh, well, he's famous. He's making me money. You know, I think Absolutely. That's why. I don't think that those radio stations are necessarily extreme. You know,
it's just they're putting on a show that's a profit stream for them.
Exactly. Right. It makes money, right?
Yeah.
So
of course that makes it even, you know, in my mind, that makes it even worse, because now people are buying into rhetoric that isn't designed to be informative or factual. It's just designed to be, you know, showy and profitable.
But the reason that I'm questioning this, and this is where I'm getting to, is I'm under the impression that the more bridges, the better, right? Because if you have a whole line of bridges, you eventually seal a gap in your one whole thing.
Right.
Right. So yeah, there's going to be some crazy bridges that are going to take a lot of work, right? You know, like of understanding, because it's like, how are you getting to this conclusion? Why are you promoting these ideas? But it starts with asking those questions and wanting to understand, wanting to see it from their perspective, if you want them to see it from yours. And you have to be able to at least understand what each person's internal goals are. If you want to resolve this, right? Am I going somewhere with this?
You are. I think it's a fascinating point where, you know, if we want to make meaningful strides to changing people's minds, the best way to do that is to, you know, build avenues of communication rather than shut people out. And you know what you said? Why do I frame it as a fight? Yeah, it does sound like kind of an aggressive stance. But I suppose I put it that way out of a sense of urgency, and that out of a sense of I'm sick of just sitting back and, you know, just having little quiet conversations with people. That's why I love working with nonprofits, because this is honestly the loudest that I've ever been allowed to be. You know, I can have the one-on-one conversations and those are meaningful, but here I feel like I can reach a larger number of people and encourage them to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Can we find a better thing to call it than a fight? Yeah, probably.
Compromise.
And how would you prefer to frame it? Like, what would be a better framing? Rather than a fight, we call it a
journey.
A journey. Take a journey with me.
Yeah.
Take a journey with me.
Let's take some time to try to understand each other.
Okay.
Right? Because we're humanists, right? We're not just pro-atheist, you know.
Now, is this a false framing? I mean, are we trying to understand them with the understanding that we could possibly be converted also? Or is it really the idea that we're trying to bring people to what we believe is the right side?
Well, the fact is, an idea. That's the problem, is everybody thinks that they're right. And so everybody is spending all of their time trying to convince everybody to think exactly like they do. And that's just not going to happen. So how about, instead of trying to manipulate everyone to think like I think, why don't we say, hey, you have a different idea that I've never heard of before. I don't understand how you could come to that conclusion. I just can't even wrap my head around it. Can we have a talk? Can I learn from you?
Yeah. Interesting.
Absolutely. I hear you that we definitely need to increase levels of discourse, for sure. You know, like you're saying about bridges. Apologies for my brief absence there. I had a little technical issue on my end. Dangers of doing these shows remote, but that's where we're at right now. So, unfortunately, I do need to wrap this topic a little bit. But
sorry,
we're going to leave it on a. No, rants are good. We love a good rant here. But we're going to leave it on a good note. Because when Rush Limbaugh died, somebody started a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, and they ended up raising $1 million for it. So here we go. Yeah, it was Quentin Quarantino, which is a Twitter account.
It's just a regular citizen?
Just a regular citizen.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
He's a University of Michigan graduate based in New York City who created a bunch of memes on Twitter, and that's how he got followers.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yep. So $1 million got donated in Rush Limbaugh's name, and yeah, he doesn't have a radio show anymore. And like I said, that's the only part that I really care about. The fact that he died, thoughts and prayers.
While I think that's funny, I would not appreciate if somebody donated a bunch of money to the Vatican in my name after I died.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see it as Rush was fighting against freedom, the freedom of choice for women. And so to do something pro-freedom in his name is the kind of reverse trolling I find effective, I guess, personally.
The ironic jab. Yeah.
The ironic jab. Exactly. Exactly.
I'm this is cool. This is why, Jenna, you're in the center.
I feel like we have a little bit more to say about this, so I don't want to close the door yet.
No. That's fine, because Jenna's making me think about this too. It's like, how would we feel if a prominent figure that we support died, and someone who opposed that decided to say, "Hey, let's raise a fundraiser for
Chick-fil-A."
Yeah, it's like it goes against the concept of building bridges and goes more on the so fantastic, Jenna. Nice going. You've been on the show half an hour and you're already starting to turn me around.
I just think a lot.
As you should. That's wonderful having you here.
That. So let's move on to our second segment here. We're going to talk about Texas on Ice, Senator Ted Cruz and Representative Lauren Boebert. So as you know, Austin has had a huge snowstorm a couple of weeks ago, I believe now. And this brought a new set of challenges 1 week ago now. Yeah. Excuse me. No, you're fine. I just worked for the last week straight. And so what is time at this point? But I'm off for the next 3 days. So thank goodness for that. But this brought a new set of challenges for the ACA production team. Our fearless leaders who are located in and around Austin were cut off from the outside world with a crippling snowstorm, knocked off power to many of our staff. We want to assure everybody that now the ACA and friends are all fine. As far as overcoming set challenges, Jason Sherwood and I were the audio and video engineers for Secular Sexuality. And for the first time ever, all the hosts were also non-Austinites by necessity. We had Puck, Rudy B, and Jenna Miu. Jenna Miu is also featured on the Nonprofits from time to time. And I think we all know who Rudy B is at this point. They've been on many shows. So this week we have another mixed bag. We're part remote with me and Puck, and part Austin local, where it's sunny and beautiful right now. Isn't that right, Jenna?
It's getting dark now.
Oh, is it?
but I have been spending a lot of time outside. Yes.
Good. I'm glad that you had a thaw, as it were.
It was
needed. So how did it go? What was your experience like?
Well, for me personally, we woke up Monday morning to the power coming back on. And we were like, what? No. It had just turned off. So I don't know if it was rolling at that time yet, or if that was the first time, but my partner got up and then the power turned off. And then we're like, okay, this is weird. So we got a text overnight that had said that they were going to be doing rolling blackouts for who knows how long. And so what we ended up receiving was about 10 minutes of power, and then it would turn off for about 30 minutes, and then it got up to like 45 minutes, and then would turn back on for 10. And so it was like you just get this little scrap of time, not enough time to cook anything, not enough time to do anything.
Right. You could, barely boil some water in that time.
Exactly.
Barely, depending on how much water you needed to boil.
Right. And
speaking of boiling water.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the aftermath.
Right. It's been a couple of days since I checked the map. Is Austin still under a boil advisory?
No, it just got lifted.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yes. But so we the weekend before moved into a new house. So this new house also happens to be completely run by electricity. The stove, the heat, what is it that's not normal? We had a fireplace. It's all electric here. So that was interesting, but it never got too cold for us. Like we were able to keep the temperature around 60. So that we were really lucky. We just bundled up in blankets and stuff, but some people had it get down to where they were texting or tweeting or something that they could see their breath in their living room. And that's just heartbreaking. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have the infrastructure to not let that happen, or we have the ability to create the infrastructure, I should say.
Apparently we didn't winterize the wind turbines.
Yeah, this is something that I have to admit, when I first heard about this and thinking about it's not that much. No offense, it was not that much snow compared to some of the things that
5 inches,
I used
6
to.
inches.
Yeah, living in Alaska and now living in Ohio, like if somebody says it's going to snow 5 inches, nobody really thinks about it. But then I have to remember that there's a lot of little quiet behind the scenes things that happen when there's snow of that magnitude. Like they'll put salt on the roads. They'll have a plan for clearing off the streets. They'll have places to put all that snow. Like Anchorage just knows to do that because you're going to expect about 6 or 7 feet of snow over the winter. Right. But Texas isn't used to that. It has no system for dealing with this. And it's not Texas's fault because normally they wouldn't have to deal with this. Oh, here we go. Yeah, read my notes. I want to talk about that some more down over there. But like how much cume do you guys get a year? Maybe in the northern reaches you might get a little bit more, and certainly gets cold, but how much snow cume can you expect there?
None.
Right. So so that's what I was thinking. It's like, and people's like, we here in Ohio, it's just good practice to have good tread on your car, on your tires, just in case you have to drive on snow and ice. I don't know that that's a concern that they have in Texas. So like the things that I thought of as just basic winter preparation that I've spent my entire life just doing on habit, I realized that that's something most people in Texas have never had to worry about. So it caught you guys much more flat-footed than it would have caught other people who are more used to it.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's definitely nothing like this. And the fact goes that it's not even just that we got 5-6 inches or so, but it was that it was below freezing for like 4 days, 3 days in a row. 3 days, I think. It could have been a little bit less than that. But it's the longest time that we've had snow on the ground in Texas in our lifetimes.
Right.
It's been
it's been a really long time.
Beautiful. But I'd prefer it in a postcard.
Is it all gone now though?
It is all gone.
Yeah.
The water's mostly melted for the most part. But anyway, so ERCOT, this is the thing, is we're learning about I'm looking at the bright side of this, in that we get a reason to really learn about where our electricity comes from and how it's being managed and all of that. So we learned that we were on a separate grid from the rest of the US. I didn't know that. I had no clue. Now, when you say that it's not Texas's fault because they've never had weather like this before.
I'm getting the eyebrow. I'm in trouble.
Well, it's the eyebrow to Texans because climate change is real. There's evidence that the weather's going to change. It's going to be extreme at times. This probably whether it's next year or 5 years from now, will happen again. Based on, right? Am I correct on this from what I've learned about climate change?
That's from my understanding, is that these are going to turn into cycles. Basically, it's not going to be singular events,
right?
Necessarily.
This will probably happen again.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that.
It'd be surprising if it didn't.
And exactly. the other part, not just Texas, but all of us are just one unexpected disaster away from a power loss and heat loss situation. This could happen to anybody.
Well, they said that he said we were seconds. Bill Magnus, president and CEO, said we were seconds or minutes to go to a complete and total blackout, which could have been for months. So
yeah, that's completely unreasonable.
So he considers this a success, considering what they saved us from.
Yeah.
That is a big problem.
Yeah, if this is success, then like what could disaster be?
That freaking close. No, I don't care who you are. Right. That is not acceptable. And so from what I've heard, we are pushing to get joined in with the rest of the US. And I think everybody's calling for all of the top dudes to get fired, or resign. I don't know, but this is Texas's fault.
So this seems like a good time to bring up former Mayor Tim Boyd, who put out a statement on Facebook that basically said, why are you looking to the government for this? You all people should be the ones who are taking care of yourself and not looking for a handout. And now let's bring this back to what we were talking about with Rush Limbaugh. Is there a substantial portion of the Texas population who might agree with this? It's like, yes, it is our own responsibility to pull ourselves up by the proverbial bootstraps and take care of ourselves, because we don't want a government that takes care of this. Could an argument be made that Texas asked for this, or at the very least we're aware that this could happen and yet decided we're going to take the risk anyway?
Yeah,
we're going to live this isolated life, and if something bad happens to us, then at least we got to live the life that we wanted to live. Consequences be damned.
I probably shouldn't. Sorry, real quick. I probably shouldn't quote without knowing the actual source, but I did hear that in like 2012 or 2013, somewhere about 10 years ago, a storm happened, and they did send out warnings that this kind of thing would happen eventually. So I don't know if I should say that because I don't know where I heard it, but
if let's just say that we'll put the source in the comments, and our fans can go and look there. Because we're going to put a bunch of links down there, since we're not necessarily talking about any particular article. We're more breaking this show down into topics. And so to keep talking about Texas a little bit, let's talk about windmills. We all heard about the windmill theory, as it were, that the windmills froze. Puck, were there windmills in Alaska?
You know what? In the time that I spent there, wind power just was not a big thing. We're big oil people up there in Alaska, and hydroelectric. So wind. We were and solar's starting to become a much bigger thing now. The only thing I really know about wind farms is that they're really creepy to drive through at midnight through Wisconsin. It's just a weird, eerie sight. These gigantic. And they're huge. However tall you think they are, they're tall.
They're white, so you can see them against the dark sky.
Yeah,
if there's any moonlight at all.
See the lights, the red lights blinking.
Oh, well, if it's completely pitch black, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm thinking like if there's a little bit of moonlight, they might glow a little bit.
That.
yeah, it might be a little spooky. I haven't actually made that drive before though, but if I'm ever in Wisconsin.
Well,
no, but what I was going to say is that there are windmills in Alaska, and there are solar panels in Alaska, and these technologies do work in the freezing cold. They just have to be equipped for the freezing cold. And so whoever is saying that windmills are frozen needs to just go back and do a little bit more homework on the matter, because that is not what brought down Texas's power grid, and not what kept it down once it dropped. So Jenna, I'm so sorry. You were starting to say something at the same time. Go right ahead.
I'm think I was just going to say that there's a bunch of wind farms in West Texas. Just random, beautiful fact. That's all.
I've driven through West Texas before, I think.
You would have remembered
it. Yeah, I know. Well, I also remember driving through Texas and just seeing a big old cross that was like probably a couple 100 feet tall, just along the freeway. I think that's Texas. Maybe it's Oklahoma. One of them.
Could be.
But no, I used to live in New Mexico, so I've driven through Texas a fair few times, especially when I moved to Florida, where I am right now. I definitely went through Texas then.
Nice.
So, let's see if we have anything else that we want to say on this. Puck, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, there were a number of people, because we, being in the humanist community that we're in, who wanted to reach out and ask, what can we do for the people in Texas? What do they need? What can we send them? And unfortunately, by the time those efforts would have really gone anywhere, like a YouTube fundraiser, for example, to get some money and awareness to buy some supplies for people who are homebound, by the time the money was rounded up and people had gotten the supplies that they needed, it probably would have been too late. Like, Jenna, you said your guys are mostly recovered now. You have power, you have clean water, right? The crisis situation is over. And if we needed to reach people then, it would have been a little too late. The thing that I could come up with was, like I said earlier, I think we're all just one disaster away from being cut off from power and electricity and heat. And so knowing what you should keep in your house to be able to prepare for such an emergency. And I'm not talking like doomsday prepper, right? I'm just talking, can you survive 3 days with nothing but what's in your house and no electricity? Do you know how to generate enough heat? Do you know how to seal off your house? Do you know how to safely have a fire outdoors? Even in winter, it's possible to have a safe fire outdoors. I grew up in Alaska, and part of the grade school curriculum in Alaska is wilderness survival. Right. We were 9 years old when we were taught how to dig your own snow shelter. And just because that's, the expectation is here in Alaska, the wilderness can kill you and it will have no problem doing so. So they taught us basic survival, like what's edible in the area in case you had to. And I don't know if that's in the curriculum in other places. From what I hear from people, it's not.
Generally not, I'd say.
But it sounds like a very good idea to learn what you should stash in your house, like an emergency preparation kit in a waterproof container with matches, blankets, some non-perishable foods. What are they called? MREs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, meals ready
to eat.
Yeah.
Or any freeze-dried meal, backpacking food, anything like that.
Yeah, so it would be a wonderful thing. It would be a wonderful thing to have some education given to people in general. This is the basic survival stuff that you need to have. And I think that's the best thing that we can learn from this. It's let's get more prepared.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that, up to the point where instead of telling everybody what they need, because we don't know, that's the thing, is different people could need different things depending on the disaster, depending on their family situation, depending on whatever. May I recommend just learning for yourself what you needed or would have needed or whatever, and then just share what you've learned, so that other people can kind of take from it whatever they want.
Yeah, and then by extension, now you can take this to your community. You can say, this is the stuff that I learned. Hey, neighbors, let me show you what I've got.
Right.
Let me show you what I packed in my shed. And then if you want to take it even further, take it up to the local legislature and say, what is the municipal plan for something going wrong? Mm-hmm. Where can we gather as a community? Where do they have food? Where do they have clean water?
Speaking of politicians,
here we go.
We haven't gotten to Ted Cruz.
We haven't. Let's talk about Ted Cruz before we move on. What happened with good old Fled Cruz, as it were?
Ted
Fled.
Basically, his daughters wanted to go to Cancun because they didn't have school. This is from him, and he wanted to be a good dad and take them because there was a storm hitting. And I haven't verified this, but I heard that he actually was telling people to stay home on his way out.
On his way out from his home. Yes.
Yeah. So then he basically got called out by the world because he had to sit in what is it, regular economy. And
yeah, I imagine so if he bought the tickets last minute.
Right. So there are pictures of him and he's basically getting called out. And so he was like, oh, well, I mean, I was going to come back Saturday, but, you know, I'm not just coming right back. You know, I was just going to work there. He said he regretted it. And he probably shouldn't have done that. There was an article that I'd found, and I think I actually put it in here, so I'll be able to share that. But that was talking about how he's not just a hypocrite. He's worse than hypocrite because it's not that he said, oh, go do these good things while I go do this. It was, there are good things to do.
Right. Right, exactly. His first thought was, you know, keeping his family safe, and his second thought was nothing. You know,
I don't even know if it was even
with the first thought.
I don't even know if it was even keeping his family safe. I think it was for comfort.
Well, he said that his daughters had friends over before they went to Cancun, and they were cooking them dinner because their house was one of the only ones that had power.
Exactly. I'm like,
yeah. So again, you know, just keeping his own little circle safe and not really caring about the state that he is appointed to be the senator of. But that kind of ties back into, what was his name? Tim Boyd, I believe, the now resigned mayor. Mm-hmm. Just ties right back into that attitude of, you know, I'm the government and you're on your own. And it's like, well, wait, then why do we have this government if they're not going to do anything?
When they have the ability to, and we're already paying for it.
Well, not even the ability to, I'd say the duty to. If not them, then who? You know? Yeah. It's not the power company's duty to keep people safe when the electricity goes out. It's the power company's duty to deliver electricity.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
But yeah, that just ties back into just how, you know, Ted, he, as far as I could tell, he brought more than a day's worth of luggage. If you look at the photos, we
don't know how he packs. There are people who have like two suitcases.
I've seen how my wife and my sister pack for 2 days. I can
there are people who pack like 2 suitcases for shoes. Yeah.
Right, but who goes to Cancun for 18 hours?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. And like for me, the biggest thing is like I can almost understand. I can't justify it and I wouldn't do it, but I can almost understand someone looking out for the safety of their family before looking out for the safety of their constituents. You know what? That's I get that. But it's more the sense of like it doesn't even occur to you to try to do something. You know,
right.
Like,
but there was no thought too. There was just the first thought of, you know, my family, and then no follow up.
Yeah.
Like there's this huge tangent over there where I marvel at, like, I wonder if we like politicians with good family values, fine, but I can almost justify wanting a politician that has no family, no wife, no kids, no nothing, because that's one less way that they can be compromised.
Right? We can be their family.
Yes, but I mean, like, I can't think of the last bachelor president. Buchanan? Do we have to go back to Buchanan? I'm going to get.
I'm going to trust your. I'm going to trust your history knowledge there more so than mine, because I do not know the marital statuses of the presidents.
No,
I can name almost all of them, mostly in order. I could probably name all of them. I can't promise that they'd be in order.
Yeah, I can't.
But I do not know their marital statuses.
I can appreciate someone looking out for their family before looking out for anybody else. Like, given the circumstances, I probably would too. And I would use every resource at my disposal to try to make sure that me and mine are safe and taken care of. But then there's a duty, right? And when you're an elected government official, that duty gets compounded more than the typical citizen. I'll make sure my wife and my cats are fine. And then I'm going to go next door to make sure that the elderly woman who lives by herself is fine. But I'm, so
absolutely.
Yeah. But like I said, I can almost understand. And then there is, like you said, no step 2. There's no second thought about what to. Oh, Jenna, I love this. Jenna's calling me out on everything on this show.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, the fact is that there are a lot of people who do believe that it is not the government's duty.
Mm-hmm.
How do we resolve that?
You know what? I would have to say like it's in the Constitution, isn't it? It's in the preamble of the Constitution.
What is
provide for the or promote the general welfare? It is.
What is that? What does that mean?
It means take care of the citizens, take care of the well-being of the citizens. And I would say that in cases of emergencies, they know what resources are available. Like here in Deer Park, we have a really nice community center. It's a big building with several different divisions. We know where the churches are. We know where the warehouses are. And in an emergency situation, we should know where to go for food. We should have someone to look to say, this is what we're going to do in case of an emergency. I would see it as kind of like those lights at the bottom of the airplane that tell you where the exits are. Your choice whether to take it or not, but at least you should know who you can rely to listen to. And I would go straight to the municipal leadership in my area, and I would go straight to my mayor in the area and say, hey, what's our plan? And if they don't have one, this is the time to start talking to them about it. It's like, hey guys, what's our plan? We should probably come up with one before Texas happens to us.
If public institutions don't meet people's needs, people will sometimes start private ones, but the private institutions don't typically service people for free, for example, snow plows. So you'd end up with communities that have partially plowed streets, and the poorer areas will just kind of be, snow logged. And the wealthier areas might even plow their snow to the poorer areas.
Oh, okay. I got it. Something.
That's why these services need to be available for free at the point of service and paid for on the back end by taxes, and not something that we charge for at the door, because it needs to be provided by somebody. And so while private institutions can't set up revenue collection services that everybody has to pay into, such as taxes, we have the government that's able to do that. And so we just have to decide what's a public service and what's not. What does everybody need that we can provide for cheaper by doing it as a group? And what are luxury goods or choices that we can make as individuals? And I'd argue that plowed streets and safe power lines are public goods.
So it's not whether or not the government should have the duty to promote the welfare. It's how do we implement the duty? Like is it their job? For example,
are we talking specifically about Ted Cruz or about broader public policy?
Well, I'm trying to understand, for his sake, the situation. So is it the mayor, or is it the senator, or is it the president, or who is it, and how much is actually required, and how much is expected?
I would say that what triggers me most about the Cruz situation is not so much that it was his job to do something about every municipality in Texas, but more the idea of, here's someone that we're trying to look up to for quote unquote leadership, and their first thought was to abandon the ship, right? Like that's not what we want to see from the captain.
And so many people are saying that's what I would have done.
Well, no, okay, but again, I'm a private citizen, right? I'm going to look out for myself. I'm not an elected official in my area, but had it been, I have a duty to do. I have a responsibility. Like if I'm the manager of a retail store and stuff goes down, I'm responsible for my team, and I'm responsible for everybody else in that building.
So right? If you become a politician, you are now required to put the city over your entire family.
I would say I didn't say priority. Remember, all I said was that there was no thought to. Yeah. His first thought was take care of his family. And I don't think taking his family to Cancun was the only way to take care of his family. His family was safe within the house. They just didn't have power, just like everybody else. It just shows that somebody of greater means doesn't have to deal with the same realities that others live in. And the fact that he's been a public administrator for Texas for decades now means that he is partially culpable, even if he didn't administrate the exact policies that led to this circumstance. I would say that that he needed to ensure that this doesn't happen again, and not just deal with the public backlash over the optics of his choice. The optics of his choice just reflect his attitude toward broader public policy, in my opinion.
Right. It's like the top is dancing all over the rest of us, and we're just looking up saying, I would do that too.
Oh, I don't say that. I like.
Well, no, I'm saying we generally.
Right.
There are people who are trying to say, I can't blame him because I would do that too. Correct. I
would argue that
do blame him. I do personally.
Yeah.
So just speaking really quick to
AOC did.
That's the worst part.
And then Beto also. I think Beto phone banked and AOC raised money for a food pantry, I want to say, or some sort of outreach.
Beyonce raised money too.
Oh, even better. Even better. The more the merrier. And that's the thing is nobody, Beyonce's not a public official. She's a public figure, of course, but not a public official. And so the fact that Beyonce did more in the public light, to draw attention to this issue and bring relief than Ted Cruz, and it just goes to show that he he doesn't care, or if he does, he has a really poor way of showing it and needs to express himself better.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here.
I hear you.
I get it. And I get, like, the worst part of that is now not only do you have Ted Cruz doing it, and then he gets shown up by other people who are saying, hey, look what we can do. We're not even representing your state, yet we can do more for your state than you did. And that it's terrible optics. But I get what you're saying, Jenna, about it's like we're criticizing him for doing something to look out for his family, and then we're saying that we would look out for our family also. So no, I hear you. This is wonderful to have you in the center. You are a wonderful moderate right there. So
absolutely. All right, before we move on, I just wanted to see if we have any other closing thoughts on this subject.
I think that was a long closing thoughts.
It was a long closing thoughts. It was.
I see this?
We had a lot to say.
I didn't look too deeply into this, Jenna, but did I see that there were a number of churches in the Austin area that opened themselves up as warming centers?
I didn't hear that. I heard that the convention center downtown opened. I didn't hear anything about churches.
Okay, because I remember seeing a list of warming centers, places you can go, and I was sure I saw churches on some of them. Now I'm gonna have to go back and try to find those documents, but it would have been nice to see, that would have been a great step in the right direction. If it's true, I'm gonna look it up and post in the description if I get it between now and then. But churches have big buildings, and a lot of them do double as community centers, voting centers. So it would be a great thing to see them opening their doors and saying, hey, warm up in here with proper distancing because COVID.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that brought on a whole other layer of difficulty in this crisis is, COVID. We have people who were going over to their neighbors' houses and sheltering. And even though people weren't going to their places of work and they weren't going out and, to bars and whatnot, as it's legal to do in Texas for some reason during a pandemic, people were also having to make choices that they wouldn't have made otherwise and shelter with people that they maybe would have been distant from, otherwise in regard to social distancing guidelines. Mm-hmm. But all of that aside, we do have another topic to move on to here. So we're just going to do a little gear change. And I'm gonna let Puck open this one up. We're gonna be talking about charter schools and vouchers, and I know he's got some good stuff to say about it. So.
Okay, so I've been following charter schools for a while, and for those of you who don't know, basically the idea is that a school can open up, and instead of you can take your children and decide to go to a charter school instead of sending them through the public school system, but your tax dollars will follow you, right? If you decide, like, I want my kids to go to a certain school for a certain reason, instead of your taxes going to the public school system, it's going to follow them to fund the school of your choice, right? There's a number of different ways that they can do this. One of them is through that charter system. Another one is vouchers, where basically it's like a coupon for tuition for a private school that's given to you by the government, where you can say, okay, I will use this then to go to this private school of my choice. And that will help offset the cost of tuition for that school. Don't get excited. It's not a gigantic amount. It's not going to get you into the highest end preparatory schools. But basically, the reason why it's seen as a good thing is because it offers you a choice. You are not just bound to the traditional school system if it's not what you think is best for you and your family. Instead, you can do your own research, find the schools that meet your needs, and then your tax dollars will follow you you and your children into that school. Now, if you're anything like me, you're seeing a lot of problems with this. And one of the biggest problems is a lack of meaningful oversight. Where there's Jenna, I love when Jenna gets the eyebrow look, and I want to get to that. But like one of the big concerns is that because they want to not restrict their curriculum, what's more important to them is that the kids get to the right end result by the end of the school year, not so much of a concern about what happens in between. So there's not a lot of oversight in there. And Ohio has been famously, like, we suck at charter schools just because of the lack of oversight as to how to measure up the standards of, is this even an effective school? And it is laughably easy to make your own charter school. There's entire websites that will just walk you through the process up to and including, you know, the applications for it and helping you round out your staff. The reason, like, I personally don't like it is because education has to mean something, and I benefit from having an educated population around me, right? People who think properly and can work properly. People who are going to learn and grow and be members of the community. I want to make sure that by the time they graduate high school, that actually means the same thing that it means everywhere in the country and then everywhere in the world. I don't see that happening on a regulated basis here. And if this keeps up in the long run, I can make a case for the American students are going to start falling behind. Technically, we graduate high school, but it's a U.S. graduate. It's not really a graduate. Jenna's got eyebrows. And before I start talking too much, I want to see what she's eyebrowing about.
I'm just wondering, what are these options that they're so desperate for? Like, what are you getting? What is it that you need to choose? Like, I just don't get it.
Okay. There are a number of people, for example, who don't like that public schools have a lot of standardized testing, right? And they say my kid does fine.
Do something to change the system, but it's
that's what in theory that's what the charter schools are doing. It's basically saying, here's a curriculum that's not based on standardized tests. It doesn't have to be approved by the school board. It just needs to be approved of by the people who are running this school. And so if you don't,
if your kid doesn't,
who decides what?
Who decides? Who controls what the rules are?
What the curriculum is for the school district?
Correct.
Usually by the municipal school board with input from the public.
So it's down to the town?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, like I live in Deer Park. We have our own school district. But
so you could be in one town and then be in another town and learn a completely different curriculum?
Yes.
I think it
this is dependent on jurisdiction.
Because
I don't know how it is. But here, like if you go 3 miles that way, you're in Silverton. And Silverton is part of Cincinnati public school system. I am in Deer Park. Our square mile has its own school district. I don't know why, but we actually decide our own curriculum here for our school district.
And I think in regard to curriculum, some the I don't want to call it a monopoly, let's say the oligopoly on textbooks leads to the limiting of some curriculums because you know how I think it has to do with Texas, I've heard, has like different textbooks for some of their science classes or something like that, or certain schools in the South buy different textbooks in regard to balancing, you know, the strong theology in those areas versus other states. And so that has something to do with it as well, where school boards will actually pick different textbooks based on what they want to teach versus not teach, or what perspectives they want to introduce versus not introduce. And that's just speaking for public schools.
Yeah. Intelligent design, right?
Yes. Intelligent design.
So it's one of those things where on paper it looks good. It's like you can research a school and you can find out what best suits the needs of your individual students. It never quite works out that way because of the lack of oversight, right? So wow, I don't even know where to start about this lack of oversight, but a lack of like if you go to a restaurant that opens up has to pass certain standards, right? Mm-hmm. It gets regularly inspected by the Department of Health to make sure that it's meeting proper hygiene standards. Then it's looked at by the labor board to make sure that they're following proper payroll and all that stuff. There's a lot of
beverage commission.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are looking at restaurants and making sure you're doing things the way you're supposed to do. This does not exist for charter schools in that magnitude. And it's even worse because like the worst thing that happens to a restaurant if it's not successful is it closes down, right? Some people are out of a job and that's about it. A school, on the other hand, a charter school shutting down, now those kids, what happens to them? Like what happens to these students who are in a curriculum that doesn't match up with any other curriculum anywhere in the area? They might be out an entire grade, worst case scenario, because there's no way to integrate them back into the school system.
Or even more than an entire grade, really.
Yeah.
Well, maybe so. How did we get there? That's what I want to figure out because looking at the system now and just
religious schools has a lot to do with it. Like here in Cincinnati, like when I grew up in Alaska. Go ahead, Jenna.
It's just so the world used to be religious, and then we had schools that probably had religion, right?
Yeah, they were at by the church. Sometimes it would be the preacher. Sometimes it would be like a volunteer for the church who would teach at the school or whatnot.
So then at some point we decided to create a public school system. And it's secular, correct? Or is there no such thing as
secular? That's the idea.
Or is there no such thing as a public school system necessarily?
Well, the public school system is supposed to be secular. The private school system is funded outside of it by the same government that funds the public school system, but it splits at the top. Yeah, is how I see it. So it's supposed to be as secular as the government. But it's not.
Private schools were created at the same time that public schools were created. It was, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do both.
Schools.
Yeah, I actually don't know.
I think there have always been, I think there have always been boarding schools and preparatory schools and whatnot. I mean, tracing back to the start of the university era, when colleges really started to become not more accessible to everyone per se, because there are certain demographics that were kept out of universities up until very recently. But yeah, just in regard to who could go there, it wasn't just royalty per se, it was anybody who could afford it. And so they would have the boarding schools that would send you to the get you ready for the university, and then eventually the public school system came along. I believe it was in the 20s. I'm gonna have to Google that to be certain.
Okay,
but even then, like I mean, even though private schools are technically not allowed to discriminate, they find a way.
Okay, so where I'm getting confused is when your house catches fire, you don't get to say, no, I don't want that fireman, I want that fireman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Why? I just don't understand why you get to say, nope, I just don't want that school.
Right.
I would say like the case
again, it has a lot to do with religion, I believe, because there are Catholic schools where you can get a voucher to go there, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Puck.
I don't think you even need to go to religion for this. Like, different people learn in different ways. We know this. So why would we want to put them in a one-size-fits-all?
So why don't we make the public school system? In
the ideal situation, I would love the public option, the free option, to be the competitive with all the other ones. But I can also imagine a case where.
So I had a conversation with a person in my family that I adore. And she was talking about how so-and-so had a kid and she's going to move over here because the schools are better up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you're going to actually relocate because the schools are better over there? Oh yeah, she's going to pay to a private school because the public schools are crap. I'm like, okay, so instead of investing that money into this public school system to make it not crap, you're just going to go and say, you know what? Y'all are fine being crap, and that's great with me. I'm just going to go literally just create my own thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's pretty much the attitude. That's my understanding too, is that if people aren't happy with public schools because of the funding, we need to fund them better. There's a whole other subtopic here that I'd love to get into, but it's not something that we have on the docket for today in regard to generational wealth, neighborhood wealth, and how that relates to public schools. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger, and maybe we'll wrap back on another episode and we can talk about those things.
I'd love to.
But know that where you live impacts what kind of education you get, and where you live is based on your ancestry, typically, in America at least. So let's go ahead and we're going to do a little looking back segment here.
Looking back.
All right. So my family's going to be thrilled I'm saying these words on air. Let's talk about Pussy Riot.
I personally don't really like that word.
Yeah, I don't either, but here we are. It's their name.
Oh yeah.
So what are we talking about here, Jenna? What did Pussy Riot do? What did they get in trouble for?
They're basically just protesting for secularism, basically. In Russia, though, that was their downfall. Was they ended up being imprisoned for disturbing the peace, basically. Quote, showing a quote complete lack of respect for believers.
Oops. Thoughts and prayers.
There's a whole bunch of. I recommend looking on Wikipedia. There are a lot of things that they have done.
Yeah, they've done a lot.
Yeah,
they really take the punk label and they run with it.
To give it a little
the thing they got arrested for. Oh, go ahead. No, please.
Well, actually, I think that's what I was going to say. Was it says I can't pronounce this woman's name, but a woman who was a topless feminist activist from the group Femin, used a chainsaw to destroy a 4-meter wooden sculpture of Christ on the cross on a hill overlooking the city center. Now, this cross had been erected during the Orange Revolution of 2004 and 5 to commemorate victims of Stalin's repression. And the desecration of the cross was repudiated by Maria of Pussy Riot, who said that their surprise displays and protests against authoritarianism are similar to us, but we look at feminism differently. Apparently, especially the form of speech, we wouldn't take our clothes off and will not. Their latest action, this is a quote by Maria, the latest action, the sawing of the cross, does not create a feeling of solidarity, unfortunately. So it sounds kind of like they kind of take the position that I take, that I understand that it may be a stress release. I understand that it may feel good to do that, but ultimately, my goal is unity.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. Going out and destroying somebody else's property is generally not a great way to get them to listen to you.
Right.
I don't find that to be appealing at all. Discourse can get us a lot further than people think, and giving up on discourse is an unfortunate conclusion to reach, let's say.
You were going to say how they got arrested. I actually missed that.
Oh, no, that's all right. Oh, shoot. I tabbed off of my notes. 1 sec. Yeah, so they got arrested. They've been detained a number of times all over Russia, but one of the best things that they got arrested for was for protesting inside of a church. And I just had to comment that's great for their punk resume. I'm friends with a few people who identify heavily with the punk label. And if they ever got arrested inside of a church, believe me, they'd talk about that day till the day they died.
Well, apparently they were convicted and sentenced to 2 years in a penal colony. That was the most common destinations for women prisoners sentenced in Moscow, a former location of a labor camp. And they became, all right, I'm so sorry. Basically the conditions, didn't have any right. The prisoners don't have any rights up there.
Right. Yeah.
One of them,
they're just treated as workers for free.
Right. Labor camp. Yeah.
Sorry. So my question,
we could even say, but I don't know if that word would be appropriate here.
Hmm.
See, but this is why it's fascinating, because you guys go deep into a subject and I go broad, right? And I wonder, like, are there some places that just should not be a site for protest? Like, is a church
reverence type stuff?
Like, you wouldn't think so, but
personally, I wouldn't protest inside of a church.
Yeah, the first place that comes up to me is cemetery. Like a protest inside a cemetery just seems to be like too disrespectful. But the entire point of a protest is to get attention and to call attention to your cause. If you don't cause enough of a stir, no one's going to pay attention to listen to what you want to talk about. If you cause too much of a stir, people are going to pay more attention to your methods than your statement, right?
Stand at the entrance.
Yeah. No, but yeah. So I mean, is that a little too? I remember one of the first episodes of Nonprofits that we did. Plug. We talked about a preacher who filmed a threesome inside his church, and apparently he got in a substantial amount of trouble for that. So it just makes me wonder. It's like we don't see anything special about churches, but out of respect for the people who do, just like we would respect a cemetery, should churches be, can a case be made that churches should be off limits for this kind of protest?
What do you mean respect a cemetery?
Like I would frown upon a protest held inside a cemetery.
Why?
Out of respect for the deceased and the people who go there to mourn the deceased.
Yeah, I would do it out of respect for everybody who's there, not for that person who I'm protesting. Like, unless it was a private cemetery or a private plot or something, and it's only one person buried there. But cemeteries are public property, and
well, let's see that as like a park.
I mean, I guess it would depend on the
protest
figure.
At a park.
Right, but nobody's going to a park to experience very raw emotions and mourn.
We don't know that. People meditate.
Well, right, but why do people go to cemeteries, though? It's to mourn somebody, and there's automatically raw emotions involved in it. Whereas going to a park, I feel like it's not implied.
You're right. Okay, so then maybe it's not.
Cemetery it is.
So it's not that we should just respect the cemetery.
Respect the people going to the cemetery.
Right. It's that the people, not only that,
you or the other person that you're protesting.
But I just want to single out that it's not that we just want to respect places because they're places. It's not that we want to respect people in that way because they're just going there, but it is that they're going there with extreme emotions. They're not going there necessarily with a clear head to start rethinking their beliefs and thinking logically. They're already going there with some kind of distraction, on their mind. So I guess that's what it is. That's what I was looking for. What it is about it.
Well, I'm visualizing a scenario where, like, let's say I go and protest at a funeral of a famous right-wing pundit who died recently, who I will not name. We already talked about him. He lived like 20 minutes from where I live. So that would not be hard for me. However, I don't want little Sally, who's going to her grandmother's funeral, to see me holding up a sign with some vitriolic statement about Rush Limbaugh while she's mourning her grandmother. I don't think that would be appropriate. And so I don't think that it's appropriate to protest at a funeral generally. There are plenty of other ways to protest a person after they've died. You can literally do it anywhere. You could go to his radio station. You can go to his, his old house. You can... Again, I'm just speaking about the person who died recently, who we're talking about, who I think we all disagree with enough to protest at one point or another, probably, were he not dead. But that's the line that I draw between the two places. And I have protested at a public park before several times. It's nothing that I have a problem with, because I don't think there's an automatic conclusion that somebody's going there, in a raw emotional state, let's say.
Right. Well, like the Capitol, some people would say, "Oh, don't ever protest at the Capitol. It's a place to be revered." That's the thing. I don't get that.
Trash the Capitol, but protest there.
Yeah. But people. But the reason isn't. I'm just trying to get my own mindset off of respecting places just on principle.
Right.
I think going back to Martin's point, it's about respecting why people are there. Right. Like if somebody is there to mourn, that's not a place where they want to have to deal with that kind of protest. So,
And here's a perfect example. I feel really uncomfortable going to church with family, just in general now. And it's not that I don't think they want me there. It's that, well, for a couple family members, I think they want me there for the wrong reasons. Wanting to reconvert me, but also all the people around me think that I'm there for a reason that I'm not. And so for me, it feels internally deceitful, even though I'm not doing anything deceitful. My presence in and of itself is I see it as a kind of endorsement, if you will. And I don't endorse those things. That being said, actually, on the flip side of the pandemic, I do hope to go out and go to a few different churches, because I want to see what it's like inside of churches that I didn't grow up in. I think that would be really interesting to see in South Florida.
Go to a Catholic high mass. Definitely go witness high mass.
Go to a Latin mass if you can.
I've been to a few Catholic churches back when my Catholic grandmother was still alive. I'd been to mass a few times with her. And actually growing up, there was a Catholic church just on the street from my Methodist one. So we'd collaborate on stuff, from time to time.
When you go to a church, do you follow the crowd and do everything that they're doing, or do you sit down?
No, I stand and sit. I'll sing, but I won't recite things. I'll usually just stand there silently.
Why do you sing, and why do you sit and why do you do everything?
I like
my
to
answer
sing
to
in
that is
church.
social camouflage. Like
I
don't,
love the 1-5 or the 1-4-5-1 cadence. Oh, that's my jam. That's the if you're not a music nerd like me in our audience, or either of you, I'm not sure if either of you are music nerds, but
yeah, I'm
Not yet.
familiar with
that's
the amen cadence. Yeah,
yeah, that's the typical end to any and all hymns is 1-4-5-1. That's the chord progression.
and the third line always ends in what I call the key of church minor. Yeah, it's there. No, I get it.
Puck
No,
knows. Puck
but to
knows.
answer the question about that, like I volunteer as a handbell choir director for a local church. They all know I'm atheist, and they seem to be okay with it. But out of respect for the other people who are there for genuine service, as soon as I'm done doing my part, I very quietly leave out the back. Like I feel like I'm too much of a distraction.
Why do you do that?
Because the choir needed a handbell director, and the handbells need a director to.
Why are you supporting a religious choir?
I love the percussive arts, and this is a very progressive church. And I think progressive Christianity is something that we don't talk about enough, and we should, because these are the people who we're most likely going to be able to build those bridges with.
That reminds me of something one of my favorite YouTubers, Jimmy Snow, says is that he'd rather hang out with a progressive Christian than an angry atheist.
True.
And that's just hang out with, not necessarily agree with on 100% of the issues.
Right.
That's just like spend time with,
But to be fair, Jenna, I did look up and down for years for a secular handbell choir. They just didn't exist.
Oh, let's start one. I'm so down. You can buy the bells and I'll play them.
Start one. Don't just say, "Oh, well, I'll just go and support this organization."
A set of handbells costs.
It's kind of like learning how to play the pipe organ. There's just so few places other than churches that have this instrument. Like a set of 3 octaves of handbells is $10,000.
Yeah,
right.
Literally.
It's not like the kind of instrument you can just rent. These are very, very expensive, and I had to find them elsewhere. So
yeah.
What do they do with them when they're done?
Usually the reason this church has handbells is because the previous church that had to close donated it to this church. So my guess is if this church goes under, they'll donate this to another church.
And then don't they both get to write it off?
I don't know what the rules are for that. We will consult the lawyer who's hanging out.
No, they don't over there. They don't pay taxes to begin with. Just kidding.
We'll consult the lawyer to see.
We will. We'll consult our lawyer after the show. So if we don't have any, or I want to leave the door open real quick for any closing thoughts on Pussy Riot.
I wish that
I went off the rails there, but I like where we went.
I wish that I had lived in a time when like punk rock was very much made pop by the time I really paid attention to music, and I wish I was more aware of the protest nature of it. Like U2 started out as a protest band. I wish that I was there for it, but I wasn't. So I'm missing this aspect in my musical history.
Well, there's always time to expand. Go get that Spotify account started. Jenna, any closing thoughts on this topic?
No, I've got a lot of thoughts.
I can't believe we're almost out of time.
I know. That's why I'm like, I shouldn't say anything because it's just going to open up another door.
Right. No, I hear that. Well, we'll have to do a follow-up episode and have you back on with some other folks, and we can get into it again and talk about all sorts of good stuff. And yeah, we really appreciate having you here, Jenna. Your perspective is invaluable.
Thank you. Y'all's too.
Absolutely.
I love talking. I love finding people who can actually talk with me about this stuff. Like,
right.
Geez.
Oh yeah. No, I'm always down for a conversation.
Awesome.
So just to review real quick, we talked about Rush Limbaugh, the recently deceased conservative radio show host. I think he got a medal at some point. I'm not sure which one though.
Yeah. Presidential medal.
Oh, I was going to allude to it without acknowledging it.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I was slighting him slightly. Okay. Second, we talked about Texas on Ice with Ted Cruz. We also talked about with school choice vouchers, and we actually need to. I think we need to edit our articles on that one a little bit. Yeah. We kind of went into a different branch of school choice vouchers, but I like where that conversation went. And then for our looking back, we covered Pussy Riot. I just wanted to say again, thanks for being here, Jenna. I know we've both seen you on AXP. It was such a pleasure being able to speak with you. Puck, thank you so much for being here as well. Your input's always valued, especially on this show and elsewhere.
I'm honored to be here.
Hopping in at the last minute too. We really appreciate that. Closing thoughts from both of you?
We just need to make this show last like 5 hours, and maybe that'll be enough time to cover everything we want to talk about.
Right. We need to let our video engineers go home soon.
And I just also want to point out, hey, you know what? We listen to the audience. We want your input because it was because of you guys that we knew that we need to add more international content in here. So that's why we had that article about international protests.
And that's something that we can definitely do going forward. I don't want to say every single episode will have exactly one international segment, but we definitely want to make sure we're featuring international stories as well. It's not all about America. And the internet is reminding us of that every single day. And we really appreciate that. Jenna, any closing thoughts?
I just wanted to thank y'all so much for having me on. I know that we had a little bit of trouble getting me here because of rolling blackouts and such. And also you, Puck, thank you for joining on last minute. I know that it's a little hard to cram that much information. So thank you for joining us. And then Martin, thank you so much. It's so nice to finally do an ACA show with you. I've seen you around and I've always had the baddest respect for you. So it's awesome to be able to do this.
I appreciate it. I always say I'm new here, and at some point that's not going to be true anymore.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
I was new here, and now I'm just here. All right. Well, thank you again for being here, everybody. Just a quick reminder, we can be reached at nonprofits at atheist-community.org. I'm sorry, that's non-profits at atheist-community.org. You got to get both those hyphens, otherwise you won't reach us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Send us any articles you think we might want to talk about or any relevant topics. You can support us at patreon.com/thenonprofits. Please go there and give us some support. We really appreciate all the patrons we have now, and we're always open to more. Lastly, reach out on facebook.com/nonprofitsfg. That's nonprofitsfg for fan group. That is the non-ACA affiliated fan group. I'm there. Puck's there. I don't know if Jenna's there or not. Hopefully
I will be.
We'll get her.
All right, she will be. And that's where you can go chat with us and all the other fans of the show. So with that being said, have a great night, everybody. And thank you so much for watching.
Thank y'all.